My name is Evan Reis. I'm a structural engineer, and I am executive director of the U.S. Resiliency Council. And we're a nonprofit organization that focuses on educating the public and other building stakeholders about how buildings perform in earthquakes and other natural hazards. We help them understand how they can mitigate their risks. And we implement a rating system that gives them measurable information on the performance of the buildings in which they live and work. When you buy a car, every new car that you buy has a sticker on it, and that sticker shows you how well that car performs in a crash test. It also tells you what the gas mileage is of the car and how much you'd spend on gas over a year. We don't have a similar rating like that for buildings, whether they're commercial properties or your home. It tells you how likely that building is to be damaged in an earthquake or a hurricane, how much it might cost to repair, how long you'll be out of that building, and so that's what we're focused on. The value of the rating system comes in, one, being able to make better decisions about buildings or homes that you buy, or that you get insured, or that you are seeking a loan for. A higher rating means a lower risk to the building in an earthquake or other natural disaster. So that gives you, the consumer, the buyer of a home, better information on how much it's going to cost you, let's say, to repair that home after an earthquake or fix up that home when you buy it. Just like when you buy a home and you look at the kitchen, if the kitchen isn't what you want, you'll have an understanding of how much more it costs to renovate that kitchen. It can also give you information, it can give a city information on what their housing stock is going to look like after an earthquake, so they can take the information that comes from, say, rating single-family homes or apartments and understand how much shelter need is going to be required after an earthquake. The focus of the USRC is to work with all types of building stakeholders. So on the large level, that might be owners of large corporations that have hundreds of buildings, very sophisticated structures, commercial properties, might be working with universities or hospitals, but it can also be working with cities who are trying to understand what the resilience of their community is likely to be. It can be working with insurance companies and lenders who are trying to understand more quantitatively how to price things like loans and insurance. But we also see this as a very valuable tool for the homeowner. It sounds big, but it can focus down small on the homeowner who can, as I said, make these decisions about what houses to purchase, whether to buy insurance, whether to mitigate or retrofit the deficiencies, and it can also help them when they're designing a new home, design it to perform better in earthquakes. So we really expect it to be used by all the types of building stakeholders. Our goal in making ratings accessible to homeowners is to make it something that can be done as part of the home inspection process. Certainly they can hire a structural engineer who will evaluate their home. And for some types of homes, larger, more complex homes, that would be appropriate. But for the average homeowner that still wants that information, working through the home inspector with tools that CEA has already prepared, like the QuakeGrade system, are a real opportunity to get valuable information on building performance at a very reasonable cost. The QuakeGrade tool is a real innovative tool that CEA has developed in conjunction with the Federal Emergency Management Agency. FEMA developed a very simple checklist that can be filled out by a home inspector or a contractor or an engineer that will give a very basic estimate of how that building is going to perform, how the home is going to perform in an earthquake. So the CEA has taken that checklist and converted it to an electronic form where it can be used by an inspector on a mobile device or a tablet. What the U.S. Resiliency Council would like to do is extend that even further and take those quake grades and convert them into more detailed estimates of the performance of a building. So for instance, for a home, how quickly will you be able to get back in the home and shelter in place after a damaging earthquake? How much is it going to cost you to repair afterwards? We can also use that information from QuakeGrade on a community-wide level. So a community can look block by block and understand where the greatest risks will potentially be after an earthquake. There are a lot of very simple things that a building inspector can look for when determining how safe and how damaged a building will be, a home will be after an earthquake. The foundation is the most important part of it. Is the house bolted to the foundation? Is the house set up a couple of feet on what we call a crawl space or a cripple wall? If that's unbraced, the house can sort of act like a card house, where the top of the house, the structure that you live in is fine, but the cripple wall potentially collapses. Things like chimneys, things like is the home on a slope? What is the siding made out of? Stucco or wood siding? All these contribute to how the home will perform in an earthquake, and these are the kinds of things that a home inspector can determine through the P50 QuakeGrade system. One of the things that we've really learned through developing the USRC is that, building resilience, home resilience, is not just a scientific problem. It's not just an engineering problem. We really have to understand the social and almost human nature aspects of how people, especially homeowners, make decisions. What kind of things will motivate them to take action? What kind of incentives, what kind of anxieties and concerns? And so part of the work that the USRC is doing is really focusing on education and making homeowners and others aware of the risks that they face being in California, but also giving them hope. It's not enough just to instill fear in people, that the big one is coming. It's also important to show them that there are ways that they can mitigate their risks. Certainly, the kind of work that CEA is doing right now in promoting the brace and bolt program and doing a lot of research into how that will benefit homeowners is one way that that kind of mitigation can be done cost effectively and really improve, probably the largest asset that a homeowner is ever going to have. One of our goals is to help people sleep better at night. We want them to know that, when they're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in their nest egg, that there are simple things that they can do to improve that performance. So not only will they be protected, will they survive the earthquake, but their asset will survive too, and eventually they can get back in it. I think one of the things that we learned in our research that was particularly surprising was that in California, there's a lot of talk about, obviously, climate change. And we know climate change is a real risk. It's certainly a risk for homeowners living in different parts of the state that are subject to sea level rise. But what we found is that living in California, there's some sense of complacency with the earthquake issue. I literally talked to some folks just a couple weeks ago who said, well, don't we have the whole earthquake thing figured out? I mean, we're an earthquake country. Why would anybody build buildings today that aren't earthquake proof? Why would the city allow homeowners to live in buildings that aren't earthquake safe? And what we realize, and of course what they have to realize, is that there are a lot of older buildings in the state, buildings that don't meet current earthquake codes. And even newer buildings that meet current codes will likely be safe, but the asset itself, the home itself, may not be recoverable. So educating people was a surprise for us that they considered sort of the earthquake problem already solved in California. So we know we have work to do to educate people.